Thrand here, and I'm here with the famous Khopesh. I have all bronze swords today, and I'm going to be comparing the different shapes. I have the Khopesh, the leaf-shaped Spatha design. This is a Ewart Park by Neil Burridge of the utmost museum quality reproduction. One of his famed blades. This was a British Bronze Age blade. This is a Canaanite Khopesh, and I'd like to thank James Jenkins once again for commissioning Neil Burridge to make this one for us, and I love its cutting ability. And we have the first Naue IIs that we received from Neil Burridge to test and compare, and we will be back with those, doing more with them. But what we found about these, they're excellent thrusters. This shape is very much like the later European blade, the Spatha design that was used by the Romans, and even all the way into the late Middle Ages. But what inspired me to do this, I saw a video by Naue II talking about the Khopesh, and he talked about Ramses II's time period. And they were comparing swords very much like this that Ramses preferred, and the Khopesh, which were Egyptian Khopeshes, but almost the exact same design. You look at it, you have your ability to hook, you have your ability to thrust, and to hook with the back of the blade, and it's a back edge sword. Very much like later sabers, falchions, the katana even. I mean, this was probably the first version, and it probably derived from an axe, not even a sickle. But today we're going to test the thrusting ability, because yes, you can thrust with this. It's lined up properly for that, and it's made for casting out like an axe, the hook on it. Very much like I like the cast blow. I think there'll be similar damages on these than thrusting. I don't know the difference in the cutting. We shall find that out. I suspect this will be a greater cutter. And we also have this one, which I think will have a superior thrusting ability. I think it was used more during the Greek era to get into armor niches. But let's get started. We're going to test the thrusting ability and the cutting ability against stuff that we think they might have worn in that region, climate, and time period. We're going to do our bottle test, and I'm going to be doing the most powerful thrust, the same one I drove into a 1 millimeter thick piece of steel, a actual car hood, a car bonnet off a van, as some people would call it. We're going to go ahead and use that same thrust because it's extremely tough material. You actually have to saw through it to cut it. Very thick plastic. It'd be equivalent to heavy rawhide, possibly used as armor or on a shield. But the idea today, we're going to see how much blood loss we get from this lenticular style Spatha shaped European blade, because yes, it's very much European. This is much like what the Europeans used for centuries. This would be the predecessor, the ones used by the Greeks. And yes, the Egyptians and the Canaanites used these as well as Khopesh and leaf shaped blades. Oh. It went in. And we have a nice wound. Crease it a little bit, give it a little more airflow. Well, we can already see the wound is its widest point and more than deep enough. And I haven't relieved the, but that's a substantially wider wound, and whether it's noticeable or not, because this material tends to close up more than flesh would, its bleeding actually would be more intense and more likely to hit more arteries, more blood vessels, more veins, and cut more tissue such as ligament and muscle. So yes, this would be a much more effective killer on the field with a thrusty. But would it be as good against armor? Probably not. The Naue II would probably perform better against different types of hide armor, thin metal armors, and cloths. We cut our analog ballistic shell head. It had one of the deepest penetrations, much like an axe, but it's elegant like a sword, and it can cut through the rolled wet newspaper extremely well. It also has abilities that a blade like this would not. You can actually hook with this piece here. You can hook other blades and move them out of the way with the back point or a shield even. You can thrust around the shield. But unlike what most people believe, the backside is not edged. It's flat. And on this Canaanite version, it's not edged here at the tip either. But it's perfectly lined up for a thrust. You can reach over a shield, which we'll do a video about this in the future. We plan on it. We're going to make proper shields and everything. And thrust into the face by pulling the shield open, or even flicking the shield back and then coming in with a cut by moving it out of the way. And the shields were all center grip, so these are all possibilities. But was it a good thruster? And if it did go in, how much more severe would the wound be? Well, just looking at this, if this is your only cutting edge, which of course it's not going to be as penetrative against certain types of armor and being able to penetrate like it did on the 1mm bronze, but in a region like Egypt or where the Canaanites lived, with not as much armor except only worn by kings and hierarchy, would it kill more effectively on the field? This is definitely an infantryman's weapon. Remember, this material is extremely hard. It's like hardened leather or some type of material like that. Let's go ahead and see if it thrusts just as well if I was standing here with my shield. Oof. It went clean in. Very nasty wound, because as it cut in, it also cut down. So the wound's every bit as big as the Ewart Park, and it still has the curved shape to be able to get around shields, hook other weapons out of the way, and then come in with a slice as you just flick them back. So yes, it has advantages, and this is probably not an agricultural tool. This probably evolved from the actual Egyptian axe and turned into a weapon without a stick or pole, but an actual axe that was elegant. The actual first saber, or even like the katana. You've got a back sword here, the falchion. All the swords you see in history that have a back to them and are curved to make them better cutters, but also it gives it the reach advantage of getting around a shield, hooking, using the back side. Definitely. It's thrusted one more time. I'm going to act like I've come over and drawn back and try to thrust straight out because it has that ability. That was a little more in with the power from the hip, which is how we pierce metal. Let's see what happens. Oof. Extremely nasty wound. And that was very elegant, the way this is set up to be able to cast and have a hook in the hand, much like an axe or a saber that you're flicking out in fighting, allows it to be thrusted straight out in front of our ballistics jelly belly on our Valkyria. She's missing her head today, and her Skjalder and her shield and all that, her shield maiden. But anyway, what we're going to do today is we're going to go ahead and cover it because they wouldn't have that many layers of cloth. This is a tightly woven coarse linen. We've got 2 layers here. This may be overkill on what they'd be wearing, but I'm going to go ahead and start off with this and put this on her like if this was her tunic. This is her coarse, low-class tunic today. We've got 2 layers. It would be quite breathable, being kind of coarse, but still pretty tightly woven. This does perform very well as gambeson in multiple layers, even stopping arrows. We have 2 layers. I'm going to go ahead and try cutting the Naue II design, and how I believe it was cut with. I believe it was cut in a manner very much in a drawing motion. That's why it's almost got a hammered grip. I don't believe it was cast out that often. And I believe it was used for powerful thrusting in different manners. Much like the Roman gladius, this is probably the most powerful thrust you're going to get coming from this type of motion with a shield to pierce stuff. The blade did not penetrate. Alright, that's the way I believe most of the cuts would have been done. But just for the sake of argument, let's try a tip style cut to see what that does to the cloth. Because we've discovered with Spatha shape designs with a casting style motion, even though the handle's not set up that way, and it's more likely to bend. The bronze will possibly. We'll see if we'll cut through that way. We have a cut into the gel, and it made it through that small hole. So the tip was able to go through this material into the actual ballistics gelatin, I'd say a good inch or so from that tip cut. Now, of course, we know the thrust will go clean through, so I will do that just to start, just to test it. Yes. All the way to the backside. Nice wound. So thrusting was probably the most common use on this unless somebody was not wearing heavy clothing or garments or cloth. Cutting they probably refrained from unless they could really get in and pull and draw a cut. Now we have the Ewart Park. It has a spine to it, and it is a leaf-shaped blade, which was not uncommon in the Bronze Age. For sure. Let's go ahead and with the blade shape. We'll try coming in a little closer with the blade this way and see what it does. What we did is we actually embedded cloth into gel, but it was unable to cut it. Now we will try the tip shot. It had a lot more heft to the cut, but it wasn't a lot more effective than the actual other sword. And no sword, even if this was the highest quality steel, would cut through this any different. But let's go ahead and try the tip shot with this one. A nice cast. Now that was substantial. The extra heft to the blade and the shape actually cut all the way through our gambeson or our cloth, and that's light in any event if it was considered gambeson, just a couple of layers of a heavy tunic, cut all the way through. It was actually able to do that, and into the gel, much deeper than the Naue II that was much better at thrusting. Let's see if it can still thrust as well. Very efficiently. It went in like it was nothing. Remember, this is probably the closest analog to someone's gut. So yes, you would get the full width of the thrust and possibly out the back side because we hit the back of the neck. But he's wondering the difference in these cuts was really substantial. This one is over 2 inches long and it went in about a couple inches, where the other one only went in approximately an inch. This is designed to cast out like an axe, and it can be used with the shield without stepping. This is not a fencing weapon. It doesn't have a large crossguard, quillion, suba, or anything like that, or handguard. And I don't think a lot of hand protection was actually worn in this kind. The shield was it. Oof. Yes! That's what I was expecting. It opened her wide up. This is the biggest wound. This is the best cutter. And I dare say it would probably go through more gambeson. I wanted to put this against the Scrimmasax or the Langsax, and I thought, well, it's not a fair test. But now I'm thinking, I think it shall be a fair test. What do you think, guys? If you want to see that, put that down below. I'm highly impressed, and of course we're going to end with that thrust to see how effective that was. One was unable to make it, the other was able to make it. Let's try one more. Not the best thruster against materials like this, but it was able to cut through it once. I'm highly impressed. The cutting ability is exceptional. Against an unarmored opponent, the wound would be extreme. Extreme blood loss as much as the leaf shape, and with all the advantages of the hooking techniques and being able to get around the actual shield, having a way to get around it and thrust in easier, as well as hook it, I think that it is the clear winner here in our test. So pitting the Khopesh, I don't know why it ever fell out of use. I agree with people and the way it feels in the hand. Pitting the Khopesh against the Spatha-shaped Naue II and the leaf-shaped Ewart Park, I'm sorry, I will give it to the Khopesh on advantages in early combat, lightly armored with a shield. Now when you start throwing in armor, like in the Greek age of bronze, I would probably say the Naue II is probably better when you have large amounts of armor to get in niches and maybe thrust through thin layers of armor. But as for during the Egyptian period, where only the hierarchy had armor and most of the people were lightly armored, as you see in the drawings, I would go with this. This would be your killer amongst the lightly armored nowadays, I swear. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed our episode. Be sure to subscribe and like, and farvel. Alright, we have our cuts here. The one with the Naue II goes in about an inch or so, just like I said. The one with the actual Ewart Park or leaf-shaped blade with more weight goes in much deeper. Looks like it's in this area here, and it goes in a good couple of inches or so. The other one goes in about an inch. Remember, there is cracking and tearing in this material because that's what happens when you bruise it. The one with the Khopesh that's the most impressive came through here, cutting into it, and literally cut all the way in. So it ripped the fabric open, and as it cut deeper and deeper, going inside of the actual gel. So we have the deepest, most debilitating wound right here, where you'd have enough blood loss this would take the man completely out of the fight. The actual gel split and busted and the fabric went in. That was here. And then also we have thrusting. that went in, and the thrusting's harder to see, but it actually went all the way through the gel. All of them hit the backside, including the Khopesh when it made it through. So anyway, we've got a pretty badly destroyed piece of ballistic gelatin, but I think it did its job showing us how deep the cuts were and how much more effective the Khopesh was at cutting.